Oh, that's her. Oh. Wait, was that Dr. Dean's thing? Phone though? Oh, yeah, I would have answered that. I do. I said over and she calls back. No, that was, did I call back now? That's what it is.
Oh, no, that's
Yeah, I
not.
can't remember.
They didn't have any lines?
I can't get, no. And I called get her smarter.
We're very close. We're almost there. She's on her way.
That'll be fun. I've always wanted to talk to you on the phone.
All right.
You are. Here. We tried to break in, but we couldn't get it. And it was, he should have answered it, didn't he? Right. Thanks. So I mistook it and Kate tried to, she's talking to someone else that she thinks is more important.
Jacinta knew she was coming tonight. What happened?
We'll call her right back then, because I took the phone to hope to call her right back, but I couldn't.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Need a gavel. Mr. Toledo. Okay, I'm gonna call to order the LSC meeting for April 10th. 6:15. He's coming later. My name is Bill Harmon. I'm the Vice President of the school board. I'm filling in for Amy Allison. If we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you for being here today. Obviously, it's been a long day for the teachers, so thank you for that. We'll do a quick call to order. Call this meeting to order.
I second it.
Can I get a third? All right, and then we'll, if we can do a roll call.
Amit Thacker, teacher representative.
Joe Paul Ross, parent representative.
Debbie Dean, non-teacher representative.
Bill Harmon, parent representative.
John Alpert, teacher rep.
Now, Mimi Jen, secretary and parent rep.
Okay, so bear with me. This is the first time I've led a meeting. We're gonna try to keep it fast and go quick. Can I get a motion to approve the
Yes,
agenda?
no.
I make a motion.
In the minutes?
Second.
Okay, we're in the library.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, she's on her way.
And Mr. Toledo was here. In the interest, like we've done the last couple of times, we do have some public participation. So if everyone is okay with it, I'd like to move them up to the front of the agenda. Any objections?
No.
No? Okay. So,
Did they sign in for public
did you sign in
participation?
for, yes?
They're gonna be our PPLC report.
Oh, okay.
Oh. who
So
is?
nobody,
Oh, okay.
Peanut gallery.
We'll let Mr. Mackey, you have the floor, right?
Hey, good evening, Mr. Mackey, teacher here at OAFM, and I'm here with two students from the student council representative. We're going to be talking about restorative justice and the student guided detention policy that we wanted to work on. You wanna take it away?
Yeah, okay, so my name is Natalia Espinosa. I'm actually the student council president here at Thorpe. So we've recently created a policy for our students, which is basically like a form of punishment policy. So we have 3 different tiers that different like crimes you can say that kids commit will go into these different tiers. And corresponding to those tiers, you have different punishments. So
My name is Aquib. I'm also part of student council. These crimes and punishments have an amount of disrespectfulness that these transgressors commit, and each tier is graded off as transgressions. So these transgressions have punishments, and these consequences will amount to something that the transgressor will receive. Now, the first tier will deal with things that are minor to not minor at all. Things like chewing gum, being disruptive in class, and just overall minor things. And the first 2 transgressions that the transgressor will have will be no punishment, but if they continue it a second time, then they will receive 1 kind of punishment. This is called 3-strike system. 3 strikes. If the transgressor still continues his or her behavior, the third strike, they will receive punishment. The first tier punishment will be,
Yeah, so like for the first tier, they're very minor things, so like a group set, chewing gums, things like this. So on your third strike, you can choose from a menu of options that you choose from for your punishment. These include cleaning desks at recess or after school, an email being sent to your parents explaining what you have done, doing a work in a different classroom, teacher's choice. So you can take your homework or whatever and do them in a different classroom, like in a different period or something, as a punishment. And you can address for success. Now, this is a thing that our student council and Mr. Mackey have thought of, where a student must come to school in a tie and jacket or a blazer for one full day, so that different students around the school know that this person has done something. Yeah, it's
similar to a duck's cap.
But at least this way, we wanted to make sure that it was a way that would be non-punitive for the child. So then this way they get to embody what it feels like to be successful throughout the entire day. Once a student, first let me say that the email sent to the parents will be student generated. So the student will craft an email sent to the parents. It will not be a teacher. Any time along this process, a teacher will and can and should contact the parents throughout this process. So you don't have to wait until the student gets to strike 3 in order to have communication with the parent. If you see something warranted, then that's well within the right. Once a student checks off a certain box on the menu, they cannot return to it. So they can go through that first menu and they have 4 times that they can do that strike 3. So talking the hallway, chewing gum, flipping bottles, eating outside the cafeteria, obviously without the teacher permission because we have pizza parties, being disruptive in class, throwing anything in class or in the hallway, throwing trash on the ground in the school or outside the school. All of those are first, and we wanted to modify the word tier and get rid of the word tier after talking with the PPLC because it was too closely aligned to MTSS. So we're going to come up with a different word than tier, but like first grade or first, what else did we call it? First level, right? Level. So all of those are first tier, and then you'll see what the second and third tier is. You guys want to?
I have a question. I have a question.
Can we go through all this first
Sure.
before we ask questions? Write it down so you don't forget it. Yes. No, sorry, a little teacher moment there.
That's okay.
So our second tier or level, these things will include running in the hallway, sliding down the banister/stairwell, drawing on desks, or a student has continued to do things from the first tier, but they have run out of choices on their punishment list.
That is how you get into the second tier by if the transgressor keeps doing these actions, they will be transferred to the second tier. And the second tier consequences include that you have to do community service in the school, which is helping teachers or janitors clean up things in their classroom or the whole school. And you have to do it for an X amount of time. Yeah. And another consequence will be no recess for 3 days. So you can't go outside, you can't have fun, I guess. And another tier would be parents are contacted to decide on the punishment, which is, I believe, a very good consequence. And you also have the dunce cap consequence, which is a blazer. Yeah, a student has to come in in school with a blazer or in a tie jacket, but this time you have to come in with that for a week, 5 days.
So after a student has filled up their consequences for the second tier, they are then moved to the third tier, or like the more like strong things that the child has done. So for example, destroying school property, talking back to an adult, or yelling at another person. Those are more serious details. So yeah, these are like things that a student isn't expected to do. So when this happens, it's very serious.
This third tier deals with harassment to teachers or other peers. And the consequences for it are that the student or the transgressor is held out of student activities like dances, field trips, and other events. And they are also subjugated to check in or out with a counselor or an admin. That is sort of like a parole officer. That's what we thought.
And, you know, we didn't want to make sure, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just singularly directed either. So the little passage on the bottom is about student council court. So this is for a student that has warranted consistent Thorpian behavior. So maybe they have filled up all of their transgressor or their menu on first tier pretty early, right, September, October. And then they were good for 2 months, right? What happens to that student that now should be in second tier, but has been good? So we wanted to come up with a process for them. So a group of 7th or 8th grade students will sit in on the presentation of the transgressor and pass sentence, right? The suggestion will be a sentencing suggestion, I'm sorry. The suggestion will be taken into consideration when the sentence is passed by the student council president or vice president. So they'll basically be able to say, hey, listen, I've been really good. I want to go back and do another choice from menu 1, and here's the reason why. And go ahead and have them advocate for themselves in order to do that. So it's not just singularly directed towards, you know, going down the tiers, but the kids have an opportunity to get back and say, hey, listen, I have been good, or I have changed, and this is what I've done. And then the student council gets a role to participate, to listen and to say, yes, that sentencing could be, they need to clean desks. So you can choose your second tier choice, or you can clean desks. That's our suggestion. And then the student council president, vice president will talk it over with the administration or the teacher, and then that sentence would be upheld. So that's kind of what we came up with for our student generated detention policy, and wanted to bring that to your attention.
What a great job. I love it. I love the fact that last time we talked about this, you know, Dunn's cap, wearing something yellow and bright. The fact that you guys took it to a dress for success is fabulous. What a great idea. You know, very well done.
Yeah.
Great job.
This is all student generated.
Yeah.
You know, basically it was just a little bit of guidance from me, but this is all their ideas.
Great. It's great that they're involved in this process.
And they were very, a lot of them were very adamant about, you know, some things that I didn't, you know, fully comprehend at the time, like drawing on desks. And some of the students are like, yeah, when there's drawing on the desk, I get dirty. And I was like, oh, yeah, I never get dirty. I don't sit at those desks. Oh my gosh, yeah, if I would get dirty, I'd be a little bit upset about that too. So that's why that was in a second level and not a first level, because I'm thinking in my head as a teacher, like, oh, that's not so bad. But for them, it's like, this impacts their well-being, you know? So I totally, you know, it was really refreshing to see it from their standpoint and have them generate all of this stuff. What else did you guys want?
I just want to add that I think it's like really important that we get the kids' perspective on this, because at times adults have a one view on the thing because they think to themselves, well, I've been through that and I've conquered it without having to do all these bad things. But I feel like times change and like different things are coming up, so kids have like a different perspective on life and they might take it out in a different way. So I feel like having kids, like for example the board, it's really important because like they are judged by students, so the students know what they're feeling and why they did this, and I think that they can understand it a bit more.
That's great.
Can we go at first and then second? I'm sorry.
My question is I think this is a great idea, but are you gonna approach the staff like with the gum chewing? So, I mean, it's gonna be across the board then, because there are some teachers that allow gum chewing and some don't.
Well,
So how does that work?
This is the initial conversation and the development from the student standpoint that we're giving now to you guys.
Mhm.
And we're looking for more guidance on suggestions on what we came up with.
These are
Yeah, I want to
great.
add
These are
to
great.
that, yeah. That we met as a PPLC yesterday, for this committee, and we were talking about you guys should be so proud of yourself. I'm like a proud mom over here for our students. This is so well thought out and just really impressive, but, and, you know, we thought that maybe we saw things a little different, and so, we thought maybe there'd be a couple members of the LSC and a couple members of the PPLC and the students, and we'd go through this and fine tune it and make sure it works for everyone and then roll it out to the teachers. So that's what we were thinking.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So hopefully that answered your.
That's great. You guys are really phenomenal.
I just have a question. Is this applicable to all of the students in the lower grades as well? And
The student council that worked on this was the student council, 5th grade through 8th grade.
okay,
So-
so what about diverse learners? Because
Again, it probably wouldn't be applicable to all students in our building, but the students that are struggling with the Thorpean way. So if you are a diverse learner and you are doing a diverse learner Thorpean way, then we congratulate that and we embrace that. But if you are a Gen Ed student or a non-diverse learner and you're not following our Thorpean processes, this is to help you, guide you onto that process.
is there something for the younger grades to help them transition?
We can
into-
pilot this here and
Yeah,
then
because
see
it
how
might
we
be a
can.
shock, like,
yeah,
oh,
see
all of a
how we
sudden
can
it's
apply
like
it.
The law came down and you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, and we may, make some adjustments for the younger grades after we have it set, yeah.
You could benefit from.
Yeah.
Little groups.
You
Some
know,
of my-
I don't think that it's a certain classroom that just, it pops and it says, oh, now it's 0 in the hallway. So that is a school-wide, 0. But it's not always applied throughout. And some children are more challenged with that than others. And, as teachers and adults, we need to be sensitive to that. We need to know our student body. But it should not be punitive. This is to help students follow in the way that we're trying to build this building, so.
I had a couple comments. I really like the fact that you tried to focus on that whole philosophy that we talk about all the time. If you do something that hurts the school, you gotta come up with something that helps the school. And you gotta really help for that, I think, for what you're saying. The other thing is, me and you guys are way tougher than we are.
You are not kidding.
Right?
Yeah.
So-
Some of the meetings that we had in student council, I'm like, okay, like, tier three. I was like, whoa, time out, guys, you have no idea. But, so they're a lot harder critics than we are, so.
So that's great. So I do think that's a great idea, having them actually work with you.
This is great. It's a good starting point, and we normally don't give applause, but you guys deserve it. You should be very, very proud of this. This is great to get the students involved. So we'll table it until we can get together with the LSC and the PPLC, and we'll put something together. And we appreciate your time and effort on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, sure.
Stop. So I would just like to stress the fact that what our goal, or at least my goal, my intent to this is that we're not looking to punish the students that have done these transgressions, but after they completed their consequence, it is our utmost duty to help them learn their consequence so they don't do it again. Punishment is not important to this. What's important is the rehabilitation. In fact, they'll never do it again.
Yeah, that's our student council.
Yeah, thank you guys. Great job. Well, that's what this is all about. Okay, next on the agenda, yes.
Just to clarify the minutes.
Yes.
Clear.
Yes, we approved the minutes last time on the agenda. We are still open to public participation. If anyone else had to sign any off. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, let's move on to the ballots for the LSC Board Advisory Board.
They're right here, I will pass them
So
out.
we're gonna pass these out. These are for you to look at. I gotta be honest, I'm not as well versed on this, but this is the elected LSC board. We have candidates here from different schools. I don't know if you wanna add something others.
So what this is the advisory board advises CEO Jackson about LSC issues throughout the whole city.
Okay.
And I think there's a couple of people on there that are from,
I have the Northwest, I'll pass it around with the ballot, so you can see who's from our area. And they also have some statements that I'll send around, don't get sent it, okay? So everybody gets one of these there, let's see. And then you could go on while everybody's reading, and then we'll collect these.
Okay. Okay, anything else you want to add to that? No?
just for future reference, this is the super LSC board.
Yeah,
It's the one that, that's the board representatives of all the other LSCs. So if that's something that you're thinking about, let me know for
We're
next year.
expecting to nominate Joel. So this, is this the relatively new thing that you've done? No, it's always gone, okay. So it's new from my perspective, I didn't hear it. So there are little statements we'll pass around too, if you guys can look at it. And when do these ballots due?
Well, we are gonna
So
vote,
do them today?
and then we can put them right, I can pass around the envelope, and you can put it in the envelope tonight, like, that's fine.
So I knew of one that was recommended to me by the principal over at Pitch. But I don't know, I'm sure all of these guys are.
Here, and we do have
There'll be no-
pitches, we do have the
There'll be no
statements on there.
endorsements.
So
Okay.
all the people that are here are from our area.
So the areas are like the schools in our area are Norwood Park, Hitch, and Northside Learning Center is also a network one.
Yeah.
Prosser High School, there's two, but that's they used to be in our area, but now it's high schools have their own individual. So, and yeah, please don't read into any endorsements for anybody.
You're next on the agenda. Okay,
We can
so,
look at this later.
yeah, we can look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just leave them and.
Okay, any questions about the local school board voting? Okay. The PPLC committee. So we'll come back to the same.
What is that? I'm sorry.
PLC?
PPLC,
So we met in committees yesterday, and so Mr. Mackey talked about
okay,
the whole restorative process, and then we also talked about PBL for next year. So our goal is to have teachers present whatever they're doing in the classroom, like showcase, so that the parents are involved and get to see what the students are working on. So it's an evening of PBL or some kind of project that the kids are doing.
So I'm gonna jump in there a little bit. So for next year, we've adopted a schedule where every single grade level, there's gonna be three nights, like throughout the year. So there's open house, everybody knows about open house, right? That may be called something else, but for right now, we're calling it open house.
okay,
Welcome to the grade. The second night will be, depending on the different grade levels, it'll be that PBL night, that problem-based learning night,
Okay.
project-based learning night, where the kids are showcasing something that they're sharing with an authentic audience. And the authentic audience is you guys, or aldermen, or, different groups that can actually make things happen. Right, so that there's a problem that they're addressing, like, for example, fourth grade does their Soul Hope project, which is all about potable water. At first it looks like shoes, but no, we're really talking about how do we work. The problem is we need to be able to access water that kids can drink in Uganda, right? What have the kids learned about this process in social studies and science and math, and share that with the parents. And then all of a sudden, when we're making the shoes for the kids that are over there, that's a direct benefit. That's awesome. And it's a really great example of something that our kids have been able to affect change, right? But that could also be something as simple as, for example, in another fourth grade project, they were doing American Revolution, right? And some of the problems in Revolution and how the Boston Tea Party influenced everything that happened, and where were the British on one side, where were the Americans on the other side, and how did that work? They did a really nice job. That was something that was just to end in class, and I said this would be really great to bring in parents to take a look and see what's going on, because I want to demystify PBL, because it just seems a little bit like way overwhelming, right? So that was part of
Yeah, our goal is just some showcase
Yeah,
what we're doing.
great idea, yeah.
So that's the other night. So there's open house, PBL night, and what's coming up next.
Okay.
So in other words, towards the end of the year, getting parents ready for the next grade that they're going to go into,
Great.
right?
Yeah.
The reason why I was thinking about doing this was a lot of the questions are relevant right now. After summer, we forget,
Yeah, sure.
you know? But right now, there's issues in whatever it is, and we can say, hey, how is this going to be addressed in the grade level that's coming up? And also, there's some practices that are very different from grade level to grade level. And parents need to know that. The jump from second grade to third grade, it's a huge jump, and it's always a big one. The jump from fourth to fifth is also very, very different. From sixth to seventh, very, very different. So all of those things, it gives the parents the opportunity to sort of preview what's coming up. It also lets the parents sort of share with the teachers, here's some great practices that we had, and tell us about the great practices that we're going to learn about, because there's some really good things that are going on. Communication is the key to a successful school, making sure that we know what's going on as much as possible. So those 3 nights are built in for next year, which is great. Probably going to try to do something like that this year, but it's much more voluntary type of thing. For next year, it's part of our plans for the teacher attendance.
Okay. Good. Okay, anything else? Good, great job, guys. The continuous improvement work plan committee.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about that in our budget. So
Okay.
we'll
We'll come back to that. Principal evaluation committee, this is a committee I run. Great job by everyone out there today, because I was at school for a couple hours pushing that principal survey. Last year we had 150. Started out slow this year. There was only 47 some people, so it actually ends today. So
Even for the teachers?
I thought it ended Friday.
Friday.
No,
is
today
today.
is what.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys.
Yeah, we can extend it.
I
Yeah.
would,
Yeah.
yeah. Can we extend it?
Yes,
Do we need to
Lori.
make a motion for that? To make it?
Why don't you suggest a vote to motion?
So I guess all you have to do is forget to turn it off.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
okay.
yeah, so, but listen, there was a great push today, so I'm really grateful for all of
It's on
you.
YouTube.
So we should push out that we've extended the
Yeah, I
deadline.
think we should send something
Yeah.
out, yeah.
We'll send something out, because to see all the computers open today was great, so.
And I think parents that weren't able to do it still want to do it, and I think that's why we
Yeah.
would extend it for
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah, so we will meet after those are done.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, that was-
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the LSC bilingual committee, anything to report?
So the bilingual committee,
I don't know.
I'll
I didn't go to the meetings.
So I know that we have,
Madonna's here.
is Madonna here?
Yeah.
Sorry, Madonna, I didn't see you. My apologies.
No,
We haven't met since before the last meeting,
No.
but we do have a meeting on Friday. If
Beautiful.
anybody wants to come.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. LSC committee on diverse learners.
we didn't signal.
Right now, we still have the IEP 504 thing being put on by Mary Fahey. She's volunteering to do this. We are doing it here at the school now, and it's the date has changed. So it's no longer the 4th, it's going to be the 18th.
Okay,
And it'll be 11 to 3.
okay,
We are going to have a registry where parents can register, and it's gonna be open to the community.
beautiful.
We might need funds, I don't know where we're gonna pull for them, but because we wanna be able to supply the parents with some of the paperwork to help walk them through the process, and like binders and stuff like
Sure.
that.
Great idea.
So, that's where we are right now, and then, we just, I think tomorrow is the last day for the autism t-shirts. So we should be seeing them coming in very soon. T-shirt picture day is gonna be, the 26th. We are going to start doing social stories with the kids. And one of the social story groups, we're actually having the 16th district come in
Well,
and work with the kids, and it's gonna be on July 13th, this summer. So it'll Saturday, and we will set up on the concrete side, kind of like a pretend community, and work with them on, and invite them to bring their bicycles. We'll open that up to the community as well as incoming kindergartners.
The 18th of May, right?
Oh yeah, that's IEP 504.
Right, May 18th.
That's what I put down.
The 13th of July will be the safety social story that the kids are gonna put on.
okay,
It's gonna be like a play
Right.
that they put on.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask a question. Do you mind if we leave that open? Because we're at about, like online, we're at 60 something.
Oh, the survey?
Yeah, no, not the survey, the shirts.
Oh, yeah.
Because the shirts we can just keep going until,
I forgot about the survey. We did reopen it back up. We are going to try to create a bilingual program for it, for both Polish and Spanish. Just, there's been so much going on, I haven't been able to translate again. But I'll get on that. And then, so that's also open. And yes, we'll keep the t-shirts open.
Anything else?
And that's all. I'm so sorry.
Welcome to the family. I love that you guys are doing this. It's amazing, right?
So just a quick little brag about this committee. This committee has hit the ground running. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of great stuff going on, and I think it's a phenomenal resource for our kids. One of the meetings that we had with Ms. Davis, I thought was one of the best parent meetings.
And I really apologize because I will say she's actually doing something with another teacher that I just don't, because she emailed me. No, that's an OT, but it's a.
Ms. Stoll.
Ms. Stoll?
Ms. Stoll.
Thank you. And the older kids in her class are creating social stories for the older cluster programs that they will actually enact. And it's gonna be on those types of levels. I couldn't remember too many details on it, but I think it's amazing what she said. Yeah, we have a great clinician team.
That's so if you look at by room 101, you'll see the little giraffe. So it's more than just pretty.
Right.
It's there to be a sensory walk. So there will be, so if you notice, the spots are there for a reason. Stuff on the ground is there for a reason. And there's also going to be other things that we will be including on there, on the walls where kids can actually touch, and it's supposed to be interactive. That idea really started with Ms. Duda and the 6th grade teachers. So there's multiple things that are going on. There's going to be another one up on the 2nd floor as well, and eventually one up on the 3rd floor, but more age appropriate. So each one of them is going to be a little different. There's a lot of great stuff going on,
wow.
and the thing that I really, really love, and I was talking to there's people who substitute as special education assistants, and they go to different schools. And they'll tell me, they're like, we love the feeling of this place. It is such an inclusive place. Like, you don't feel that the kids in the cluster program are apart. They are part of what's going on in the building. And that's one of the greatest compliments I've ever gotten from somebody who's been in multiple buildings throughout the system. And this is a really special place. And we know that, but it's also good to hear it from other people. So
I don't get to chair this meeting much, so I get a little soapbox today. Because what you guys have done in the PTA, I mean, it's unbelievable what this changed. The Friends of Thorpe, obviously, I mean, you guys, it's a community. It's amazing to see these 3 different things just taking off and doing so much. Personally, makes me feel like we should be doing more here because you guys are dominating, and I'm grateful for it. It's all about the well-roundedness of these kids in the school, and so thank you for all that you do. I love it. It's amazing what you've done. Okay, wellness committee. Since Amy is not here,
Vince, you want to fill us in a little bit on what the last thing was in the wellness committee? I think they were doing the homework survey.
And the social media thing that's coming up?
Well, that's for PTA.
Oh.
So I think that we were still looking at the homework survey. So I know we've done the homework survey for.
It was May 9th, I think was going to be that time.
I think so. Yeah, I have to look and see. So right now we were looking through the surveys. We've done
we've done the teacher survey and the parent, and I think, and we've done, and student council did the student survey. So they're sort of just putting all that together. And one of the reasons that's come up has again been, well, why are we doing the practices that we're doing? And, just delving a little bit deeper, there's no agenda here. It's basically just to sort of like figure out what our homework practices are from grade level to grade level. And also just getting the different perspectives from everybody. And it's more of an informational type of activity for us on that wellness committee. And again, I'm just on the, I just visit the committee.
I should have done this at the beginning, but Amy Ellison, obviously our president, is away, and she's in charge of the wellness committee. I'm sure she's watching online. But Amy is, she's with the last 5 years, she's been working on this documentary and this film that is premiering in San Francisco today. So we're seeing our wellness as a long culmination of a lot of years of work. So we're excited for you to be watching, and good luck. So, and I expect us all to get red carpet treatment when it premieres in Chicago. So. Okay, the communication committee. You have the floor.
Nothing new in terms of updates.
Okay.
We'll continue to, based off feedback, especially from the survey. There are a couple of pieces in terms of communication from the school and the principal. So based on what we see, maybe
No, I think the new, and not that it ties in, but the Friday letter and how it's been segregated going out, I think has been great. So hopefully that's we'll get some positive feedback in there as well. Okay, let's move on to school committee organization discussion reports. And we'll start with the Friends of Thorpe, which led with a very successful black and white fundraiser. Harriet, you have the floor.
So the Black and White Bash, we made about 34,700. It's amazing because we were down in numbers, like substantially. And I think part of that can be attributed to the funded need, the Bears Lions raffle tickets, and Thorpe teacher experiences. So all of that contributed to bumping up the donations. So thank you everyone for sharing the event and participating.
Thank you. It's always something everyone looks forward to, and unfortunately I missed it this year and I haven't heard the end of that. So, but it sounds like a great time was had by all, and it's a wonderful thing you guys do. So thank you for raising money for the school. PTA.
Sure. Okay, so a few things that I kind of want to chat through. So we've got the Digital Families event, that's April 26th. So we have, for those of you who don't know, we received a grant for $1,000 from National PTA and Facebook to put on this Digital Families event. And we have breakout sessions. It's going to be about 2 hours. We need at least 50 people there to fulfill this grant. So we'll be raffling off a Chromebook and among other things. But anything that you can do to help spread the word is very much appreciated. It is open to the community. It's kind of been blasted on Facebook. We went to the library.
It's out in the public. We have it at 2 different libraries and some therapy centers in the area that are academic style therapy centers.
Flyers went out today, or yesterday. And we'll continue to have those reminders. So any ideas you have to get it out there more, let me know. But it seems to be going well, and we'll have food and drinks, and it'll be a Friday night.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes. May 10th and 11th. So this is Harriet. So Huron is coming on the 10th. Is that right? And so what are they doing?
So they typically help us like staining the outdoor structures,
Okay.
the wooden structures out there.
Yeah.
They help with the garden, and they give us a check, normally $500 to just buy plants and stuff like that.
Okay.
I know Miss Dean was strong arming them, trying to see if we can get a little bit more from them. So, but we'll see. we'll see what happens. But yeah, so they're the ones that helped buy a lot of plants. Being able to put out there.
Because we were thinking about doing all of the different groups, Friends of Thorpe, PT, everybody, doing May 10th and 11th to kind of work on the grounds, I know we had talked about the kindergarten outside. So doing some projects like that. So we'll be sending out something soon about that.
Yeah, so it's the kindergarten and the first kindergarten. So on the other side, by the lunchrooms, you know, our little flower beds. Flower beds aren't really being used. So we really would love to have like gardens out there for the kids, and half of it can be kindergarten, half of it can be first grade, since they're both on that side. So it might be I think it'll be a fun thing. And then hopefully have somebody just let's say planned painting on the walls. As opposed to what we had this week. Yeah, so I'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay. Speaking of painting, we're also looking at painting the auditorium walls. What was that? I actually have a few painters in the house here in the school that are willing to help and also get us some discounts on paint. So going to be talking about dates. It probably needs to happen over a weekend, I would assume.
So we'll have to talk.
Okay.
We'll have to talk. So I actually would probably want to talk to both of you guys.
Okay.
Just sort of like figure that out.
Okay.
Because if we're talking just underneath the what do you call this thing? It's a chair rail, but it's not a chair rail. It's too high up. I don't know what they're called. You know what I'm talking about. It's a chair rail on the side of the auditorium. Underneath that's not a problem. But that balcony is so huge that an actual painting of the auditorium is a lot. And it's
The stage too, right, for the drapes, wasn't there some water damage or something?
yeah. There's a few things in there. So I think we can touch on this thing.
That's something we're.
Miss Wilson was the person who did. It was with Missy Raven back in. I
thought it was Mandalay, but I don't know.
No, so
I thought it was right before you
that's
came, but I
something-
could be wrong.
15 years ago is what I.
Is that something we're able to do without any bureaucratic issues?
There's nothing that we can do without bureaucratic.
Right, okay.
That's
That's why you guys need to talk.
So we sort of have to figure out
Right.
how that would work. But I think it was a long time. I mean, it was a long
I
time.
could be wrong, it all blends together,
No,
so I didn't think it was that long.
Yeah, because I talked to Miss Wilson and she's like, that auditorium is beautiful. That auditorium looks a lot better than when it was actually done. Because Esther Peichel from the 30s was like, this used to be beige. That was what we had here. And so it looks better than when they actually put it in.
Even about the auditorium, that's bad as the seats.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
There's a few things in there, but that's a humongous project.
Yes.
That sounds like a fun challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
Anything else? I mean, again, please keep it to 20. I'm just kidding. But again, the PTA, what an amazing job just to get a grant. I know when's the last time you guys have done stuff like that. So and to have the luncheon today, and it's wonderful to see how much you guys have done and grown, and all three groups. It's great.
We did we started, because June 7th, we are doing Kindergarten Olympics. We've done it for the last 2 years, so this will be our third year. And we started a sign up for volunteers today. And I'm only putting this pitch in case somebody's watching this video. We will eventually have a sign up online through the Friday letter that will, other families can start, kindergarten families can start signing up for that day. And to remember to, obviously do the volunteer thing.
Is this for incoming kindergarten or?
Nope, this
No,
is gonna be
this
the
is-
kindergartners going out.
Okay.
This is their celebration.
Oh,
And,
okay.
because they
Beautiful.
can't wear Halloween costumes anymore, so. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, kindergarten's gonna wear Halloween costumes.
So
It's
anyway,
after kindergarten.
But that's June 7th, and
Okay.
it's something the PTA is also gonna be putting on, so they'll use the field, and, it's a pretty big event.
Here, I think June 7th, and I think, well, we'll be out of school, it'll be summertime, and then I just realized that we're gonna be in school.
2 more weeks.
When you put it online, can I just ask that you ask the parents that are going to be volunteering, if they didn't do the volunteer form, to please do it like right away?
We absolutely will. It was already in the letter,
Okay,
that we put out for teachers today for sign up, so that was part of it. But yes, just so you're aware,
thank you.
that is going on.
Okay,
So,
go
a
ahead.
question on the
Yeah.
digital family, thing. We were looking at it, we were like, wait, are we at this? Like, so this is just participation from the community?
It
We're doing it
is.
as a fundraiser?
It's not a fundraiser, so it's completely free, there's food, drinks, it's really just informational about how you can be safe online, there's password security, topics like that, healthy online habits. There will be 3 different breakout sessions, which will be about 20 minutes each, where you have kind of just good discussion. I think there's you can hold up a red or a green sign if you agree or disagree. So it's pretty interactive.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why digital, we're trying to
Yes.
show awareness, and that's where we get the back for. Okay, that's great.
Yes.
Chicago Police is also.
Yes, they will be involved.
Awesome.
Yeah, good information.
Okay, thank you very much. 7th and 8th grade committee.
So I will tell you, DC was great. It was 20 miles, about 22 miles on the walking during that trip, which is just, that's, we can do that and more. And we were tired. Great flight, great kids. Oh my goodness, we had a wonderful time and incredibly smooth. I want to give, brag about Mrs. Dress, one of our 7th grade committee person who is helping in terms of our fundraising. Miss Sanabria is also really great in just terms of coordinating with Hemisphere Travel. Hemisphere Travel was fantastic. Like everybody did a really nice job. And all the kids came back, so that's a big plus. And all the teachers came back, an even bigger plus. So,
How many kids went?
we had 45.
Wow, that's great.
45 this year. And it was, I want to thank Mr. Coughlin as well. I think this trip was even better than last year's. I mean, I think it went really smoothly and both have been great. So I look forward to, doing it again next year.
Yeah.
So 8th grade, and in terms of 8th grade, things are going well. We got our shirts. I want to thank Miss Sabella for helping us out with that. Our fundraising for 7th and 8th grade, where we are right now is just getting ready for next year. Like our 8th grade stuff has already been met. Now it's just getting 7th grade parents ready for 8th grade and reaching out to our 6th grade parents and say, you need to start working on that Washington trip now. Because we were able to get, with our fundraising efforts, we were able to bring that cost to $500 per kid,
Oh, wow.
which was
That's
great. Because it was about $768, something like that. So we were able to get like $268 off of each one, which is phenomenal.
Phenomenal with airfare and hotel.
$500 with everything.
All the
So,
sites,
it was really good. And I think it was a really good bonding experience for our kids. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it in 7th grade, because obviously kids have the option, and we get a lot of kids that will go to academic centers and things like that. And some kids will say, I got to an academic center, they don't want to go, I wanted to stick around. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it in 7th grade as opposed to 8th. It also is a nice team building activity for the new kids that come in, because we get a lot of new kids in 7th grade. So that's why we do it. We're one of the few schools that does it in 7th. Most do it in 8th. 8th grade, we'll be doing a Milwaukee trip. And I think I'll be joining you guys, either myself or Mr. Roberts will be joining you guys for that trip as well. And we're looking forward to that. It's going to be a little different. We've never done a Milwaukee trip for 8th grade. We've always done just Chicago. So we're going to see what wonderful things lay beyond the cheddar curtain.
That's great. Okay, anything else on school committees or organizations we missed? Okay, we're gonna skip the principal's report today, and the meeting is adjourned.
So the principal's report today is going to be short because we're only going to focus on budget, right? So our budget, if you guys received the email that I sent you guys all about, how happy CPS is that we were able to get our budget in April. This is the earliest that they've ever done. Like, I've never had a budget in April. Typically, we've gotten budgets, on a normal year, we get it towards the end of May. On the crazy years, which you guys have, I think Ms. Ellison's been on part of that, it was July. So we've had those types of things. I'm gonna just go quickly over everything because it's just an overview. Just to give you a 20,000 foot overview of this. Our budget's about $7.8 million, right? That's quite a bit of money. In reality, most of that is in payroll. So when we look at how many people actually work in this building, in terms of teaching staff and support staff and tutors and lunch staff and custodial staff, there's about 90 people that work in this building. So if that parking lot seems crowded for teachers, there's double the number of people for the spaces that we have. So it's quite a big organization. An organization of $7.8 million is a pretty sizable small business, right? So with regards to the budget, the largest chunk of that budget is payroll, obviously, right? And then there's different things that are broken down where you have some flexibility in terms of what we're spending and some things that we really can't get away from. Like, for example, software licensing. We normally spend about $30,000 in software licensing. We're not going to get away from that. With regards to what are the initiatives that are coming up and how do we sort of get ready for that? I'm going to talk about each one of those things and sort of give you like a little breakdown. And obviously, we can get into deeper details. So if there are questions that you have, write them down, and then we can actually get into it a little bit. Yeah, and we can probably just set out that thread and just post that if we need to in terms of what's going on. You're going to be presented the budget now. We will have to vote on the budget again before April 30th. So we're looking at probably calling a special meeting the week, I think the 22nd is when we get back from spring
The
break.
22nd, we
Right,
come
so
back.
it'll probably be sometime during that week where we'll have to actually adopt the budget. Okay, so let me go through that right now. And again, I'll try to make this as short, but also as exhaustive as possible. So in terms of our budget overview, so here is what CPS gives us. And I want to sort of walk through this with you guys. This is what was given to me in terms of what they had. So they get us together and they talk about what's going on. So there was a significant shift in our approach to student-based budgeting last year in terms of the funding from the state of Illinois. So there is more state funding, which is great. All right, so anyway, they're basing our allocations, this is new. For us, this is not a big deal. For every other school in the system, it's a huge deal, especially for neighborhood schools. They're basing their projections, they're basing your budget on your 20th day of the year before, right? So what would happen? What would happen at neighborhood schools? All of a sudden, the first day of school starts and they're down 100 kids. Well, down 100 kids means $450,000 shortfall for that year. You can't run a system like that. So they sort of said, hey, this makes more sense. We have a little bit of a cushion. So what we're going to do is we're going to base our projections on your 20th day of the year before. So that way, if you know you're going to be short, you can already start planning throughout the year. So that was a big round of applause from all the neighborhood schools, because can you imagine we go in and they tell us we're $500,000 short, deal with it. That's typically what would happen at Gray, Portage Park, all these. We are so fortunate to be in the school where we are, where I know when we say there's going to be 850 kids, there's 850 kids. And that's phenomenal. So that's a big deal. So there was an increase in student-based budgeting to the 2.5%. There will supposedly be a cost of living adjustment. I don't think we need to call it a cost of living adjustment. Let's say it's a cost of educational adjustment, I guess, where they're trying to match the COLA for for CTU, so that there's an increase every single year, because there's always a little bit of an increase, but normally it gets wiped out with teacher pay, right? So they're trying to make that part of what we actually do. So they increased the rate of supplemental aid per pupil, $10 per kid. Well, what does that mean? So we would get something called supplemental aid, which is, it used to be called 225 money. And you guys don't know much about this, except for the people who've been on LSC for a number of years. 225 money was the state money that would roll over from year to year. So you could actually hold that money, and let's say that you have a big project, like an LCD sign or something like that. Well, you're gonna say, I'm gonna hold that money and I'll put that money into the LCD sign over a number of years. Because everything's changed as of last year, there was a big change in this as well. The state basically said, you can no longer do that. You can't hold money from year to year. Whatever you say you're getting, you need to spend. There's pluses and minuses to that. Me personally, I kind of like having a cushion and trying to plan for the future. But on the flip side, hey, you've been allocated this money, it should be used with the kids that you have. So I can definitely see both sides. All schools will receive federal dollars from either Title I or Title II. We haven't received Title II money. Well, we didn't receive Title I money because we're gentrifying. Our free and reduced rate when I started here was over 50%. Now it's about 47, 48%. So we're overall our incomes are getting a little bit higher. So we were at like 55% when I first got them. So there's been some sort of a demographic shift. So as you have as you have a more affluent parent base, you receive less Title I funds. So we haven't received Title I funds, I want to say about 5 years. But now they have something called Title II. These are federal dollars. And the Title II, we didn't get them last year. But this year there was $50,000 of Title II money that we can use for professional development. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. More things here. These are system-wide, so just bear with me. There's an equity grant funding for small and under-enrolled schools. It's not us, but a school like Stock School, for example, where they have a very small number of students, gets a little bit more money because of this equity grant. So they're trying to shift that around with everybody. There is more money for bilingual and English language learners. $6 million, but $6 billion over 660 schools, that gets to be fairly small. There's a huge push for early childhood, and if I had the space, I would definitely get pre-K because it's wonderful, but I don't have the space. And then $5 million in new programmatic investments, and an increase in $22 million in diverse learners funding. That's system-wide. All right, this is for me. That is also for me. That's for me. That's for us. Okay, so what we have in terms of what's coming up, we received our budget right before the end of March. We're in this phase of talking, seeing what's going on, making sure that things are accounted for, and then we'll be reviewing and voting on the budget between the 8th and the 25th. So for us, it'll be that week of the 27th. Here's a prettier timeline. All right. So for me, after we do our budget, then we have to call talent and say, are we going to be changing positions around and things like that? And I'm going to mention that a little bit. Now, the good news to all of this is that I don't foresee any type of cut in terms of personnel, which is great. So let's see if there's anything else on here. No, this is all, and I'll share this part with you guys. I mean, it's basically what I said. By the 25th, the final budgets have to be done. We're more or less finished, but I want to share it with you. And then if there's any other things that you guys are looking at that you see, we can adjust it before the meeting, the week of the 22nd. All right. So I'm going to try to make this bigger. So bear with me. I like giving you guys like 3 years worth of where we are. And I'm hoping I can sort of zoom in so you can, again, this is 20,000 foot overview, right? So in 2018, before things changed, the special education funding was separate from the special education funding was combined with the school funding. So it was all in SDV. So what ended up happening was, it looks like, and you have this, I shared this with all of you, but it looks like there was a significant drop from like 4.5 million in terms of our fund cap to 3.7 in 2019. But in reality, what that was that they just changed. So they went from school-based diverse learner funding to system-based, back to system-based in 2019. And in 2020, it's the same as 2019. So we're looking at our fund cap of about 3.8 something?
Yeah, 3.89.
Yeah, $3.8 million dollars. And then there's a whole bunch of operational things in here. In addition to that, it comes out like to run the school, it's over $7 million. So it's 7 point something. Anyway, so here is. All right, so this is fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20, right? And it's a good breakdown of what's going on. Special education funding increased from 1.46 to 1.68. General education funding increased from 355,000 to 367,000. The student-based budgeting, overall, that was the allocation, went from 3.7 to 3.737 to 3.829. We do get funding from magnet schools. This is kind of important, and I'll explain why in a second. The magnet school funding, so 6 magnet school positions here cost us $800,000. If we were to lose magnet school funding, and magnet school is a federal program, if we were to lose magnet school funding, we'd have to figure out how to get $800,000. Just keep that in the back of your mind, because as we walk through this, I'm already thinking like this, because you never know what's going to happen. You're never guaranteed that money. That's federal money that they always vote on. So depending on the administration and their view of whether they like magnet schools or not, you never know. Now, since 1968, it's been there. So I don't expect it to go anywhere. But every single year, I have to reach out to the congressman, Dick Durbin, and Duckworth, and representatives. Hey, make sure that you guys vote for this, because we want to make sure that we continue getting this money. So there's money there. The cell tower revenue of $31,458. They're no longer putting it on here. They're saying it's going to be there. And I said, well, I'm counting on it being there, but I didn't see it on our budget. So like, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be there. So here's where I am. If they say, if they change it, because we used to get over $100,000 from the cell towers.
Yeah, it's a lot more than
For a
30.
long time, right? But now they divide it up with a third for us, a third for all the schools around us, and a third for CPS, right? That can very easily go away, and they can just say, hey, it's our building, we're keeping the money. If that happens, I'll buy cell towers, I don't want them. Okay. So, but it's about $30,000 per year. LEA flow through instruction, that's part of our cluster program. It looks like there was a drop of 100,000. It wasn't. It was just how we use those positions. So we just moved one position to just general special education as opposed to cluster. But it's just an accounting thing. It's not really that we lost any money there. In terms of lunchroom, our lunchroom staff has increased, so we went from 98 to 115. Our bilingual went up a little bit, I think. Where is this thing? Our bilingual went from 55 to 63. That's a very insignificant increase. And then they included the $500 that they normally give for the parents in that amount. Title II, that's something that's new. There's $50,000 on Title II. That's supposed to be for professional development. You can also buy software, you can buy other things. I really want to focus on professional development with this money. Things like paying teachers to work on, one of the things that we're thinking about for this year, thanks to Ms. Alper and Ms. McNally and Mr. Roberts, so everybody's doing 8th grade algebra, right? But Ms. Alper's 7th grade class is also doing, one of her classes is doing 7th grade algebra. Once these kids pass 7th grade algebra, what do we do with them, right? So coming up with what are we doing is something that they've been working on throughout the year, but I also want to have a little bit of money to give them to plan out for this. And that will help us as of July 1st. That's just an example. One of the things that we were talking about today, Mr. Roberts, if you want to just brief everybody on some of the things that we were talking about, math and science.
Yeah, so just the notion of, ultimately science is applied mathematics, it's the integration, and building a more coherent structure where math and science is significantly more united. Like forecasting way down the road where a science teacher does an experiment, collects data, that data then is taken into the math classroom, and the math teachers are using the equations that they're working with to analyze the data and look at the systems and structure. So a more dynamic and more cohesive relationship between math and science, which takes a lot of work because you've got to do the planning to connect the two, you've got to look at how they flow in and out of each other. But what it does is it gives a lot more purpose and meaning for both disciplines to the students, and it takes that mathematical skill and really weaves it into 2 classes as well as a science practice. So in essence, the student gets 2 math classes and 2 science classes.
So Mr. Roberts' background, he was a physics major, right? So one of the things is basically applying math to natural phenomena. And I'm like, that is what kids need to see that. They need to see that there's a connection beyond just the textbook. Hey, yeah, here's the formula for slope. Like, this is why this is important, right? And of course, everybody's going to bring up roller coasters, but there's more to it than just that. And how are we purposeful on demonstrating this, starting with kindergarten, so that math and science are seen as integral parts of each other? We did not get that when we were growing up, right? We were taught science, we were taught math, and there was absolutely no reason why those 2 connected. And I remember going, oh, physics, yeah, I know there's math in there somewhere, but it's just dividing something by something, and I always get the answer, I know how to do it, right? But I didn't understand why those formulas were actually important and what the relationship was in math. We need to shift that, we need to change that, so that the kids can actually say, hey, this is a phenomenon that we're understanding, that we're sort of seeing. How does that translate mathematically? And where do you start with that? Okay, so we need to start working on professional development that aligns with that. That was something that you were working on with high school and struggling with it, obviously, because everybody struggles with this. And I'm thinking, why aren't we doing this like now? Why aren't we starting this from kindergarten to 8th grade so that they can see that math and science, mathematics exists to explain the natural phenomena that you see in your physical world, right? So when Newton went around and invented calculus and described the logical order of the universe, right? He used mathematics to do that, right? Kids are not beyond that, right? Our kids can what we're asking of them is way more than what they were asking of us, but it should be like that. We should have kids that think outside of the box. That's why you got to be at Thorpe. We're going to be working on that. We'd love to use some of that professional development money to do those types of needs. And also, I think necessary ways of thinking, because the way that we're approaching the world of tomorrow with Google, if you don't get thinkers, they're not going to be successful. The answers are accessible to everyone. So, you can basically get anybody to figure out something that's already memorized. You need to get people who can actually think through new situations. So, but that's coming up. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Then, again, these are, in the bottom line numbers here, we already talked about in terms of the why it does that. Anyway, so, breaking us down, good news, adequate funding for all current positions. We are continuing our DL initiative, which has been, there's so many positives to this. Having the inclusion teacher at one grade level has been great this year. It's been a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice for our fourth grade teachers. They've done a lot of work, right? Because I'm learning not only their general education class, but also the needs of special education students and all about IEPs and all of these other things. There's a very good positive about this as well. If our teachers are endorsed in special education, they can be funded from special education. So what does that mean? That means that I can actually move some of our most expensive teachers into special education positions, even though they're teaching special education and general education, and save some money that way. That's really important for us. I told you guys when we first started this whole DL initiative that it's just a matter of time before everybody catches up to us in terms of this, because it is. I was talking to the superintendent of Northbrook, and he was telling me, yeah, we're starting to do the same thing, like system-wide, not at a school, but system-wide. CPS is kind of different. At CPS, every principal is their own superintendent, right? CPS says, here's this money, figure out how you're gonna spend it. Most of the districts, they say, this is how you're gonna spend it. I love this system. It lets you be a lot more creative, a lot more innovative, but you also have to think outside of the box. And one of the things that I thought about was, okay, if people have the special education endorsement, they're also teaching special education students, they can be funded from special education money. Called downtown, they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So that move will allow us, so this has worked out fairly well because we've had Mr. Shurtek in that position with teaching third and fourth grade science. I won't have Mr. Shurtek in that position next year because we didn't have the funding for it. By moving position numbers around, I will have the funding for allowing for one more position. So moving 3 gen ed positions into DL positions, and again, doesn't change what the teacher's going to be doing. It doesn't change anything other than just the position number. Frees up $118,000. By freeing up $118,000, I can hire someone else, which is also very helpful, which allows this program to sort of continue. So that's one of the, so there are just multiple benefits to what's going on. And it also allows for expanded MTSS in third and fourth grade. So, and I just talked about the increased special education funding for general and cluster programs. You guys saw that. There's a positive increase in internal account student technology insurance fee. That little $25 fee where we say, hey, if you break a computer, you don't have to worry about it, covers everything, gives us a net of about $5,000 a year, which is very, very helpful for us. So we're sort of self-insured. So there's been a significant increase in 124 funds as our cell tower funds are, I put completely replaced because I've never seen this before, where they're not showing up anymore. So in reality, the reason that we're in a really good spot is because of our parents. That aftercare program has become our rollover money, right? Our what's going to happen if everything falls apart. Right now we have a cushion of about $300,000 in there, and that's more or less where I want to sort of be. Maybe a little bit more, because again, that magnet funding is $800. And again, guys, this is the way I think. In this season, I'm always thinking of what's the next shoe to drop. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then student fees, I want to keep them at exactly the same levels as we've had for the last 6 years. So we have some of the lowest student fees in the neighborhood. There's no reason for us to raise it. So it's fine. And again, the idea of the student fee is more of, hey, it's an investment in what we're doing here. It's not even like, is it necessary all the time? No. But it is something that's like saying, hey, everybody contributes. Everybody's part of what's going on. Bad news. So the worst part of this is we've received the budget earlier than ever, but CPS has not negotiated with its unions. So all of these budgets are preliminary, right? So once, and you'll hear CTU, CPS, they can't come to terms, blah, 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 all this stuff. right? So what am I expecting? I'm expecting there's definitely gonna be a salary, negotiations on salary. And there's a huge push from CPS for a full-time counselor, or not counselor, full-time case manager, right? Right now, we're funding that full-time case manager ourselves, that's Ms. Leibovich, so it shouldn't be too bad, in terms of how that's gonna work out for our budget, right? Because half of it is already there anyway, right? But if CPS comes back and says, hey, you need to fulfill all of it, we're probably looking at another 50 grand. We can swing. I'm not worried about it too much. But I want everybody to know, yes, it's a budget, consider it preliminary. Okay. We did not receive the grant for after-school programming this year. We typically get about $30,000. We were able to subsidize this from 124 funds. Good news and bad news. We didn't get the grant, which meant that I could pay my teachers more for after school. Their rate went from 40 to 47. If we get the grant, it goes back to 40 for after school funding, okay? Because that's where that funding came from. But if not, we'll just keep it at the instructional rate that we have. Again, all of that is possible because of 124 funds. That aftercare program is incredibly important. There was the elimination of rollovers. I already mentioned that. That's not going to be happening anymore. 225 is gone. So now it's classified, and you'll see it on your budget report. It's 115,576 is the grant number. Where the whole Airmark thing, who knows what's going to happen with that? I know that they're renegotiating that contract, but I'm counting on Mo to still be in between two buildings. You know, I hate it, to be honest with you, but I'm the one who basically said, hey, Mo, let me set you up with Beard. It's close by. It's a small school. You know the principal. It's a good relationship. And it is. She normally says if Mo has to go, he comes over. If he has to go over there, I send him over. So it's a good working relationship. So, but I'm not expecting that to change. So right now we have a student fee shortfall of about $15,000. In other words, in terms of those $55 fees, there's about $15,000 that still hasn't come in. No big deal, because we get all that money during yearbooks. Those little yearbooks bring in most of that money, like the $10,000 to $12,000 comes right into us from student fees as soon as the yearbook comes out, because all the kids are like, I want a yearbook, and then all of a sudden everything comes in. Any questions so far on this? All right, so what continues? What does it mean to work? So the priorities as stipulated by the teaching staff are the same. First, make sure everybody has a job, or as best you can, right? Second, focus on professional development. Third, instructional materials and equipment. You guys are going to see, we just purchased another 6 Chromebook carts that will be going up to the 3rd floor. The ones that are in the 3rd floor will be distributed to the younger grades, right? And that's just a continuous cycle. That was like $64,000.
Right.
They're here. So it's just some time to figure out how to keep them neat is what we're working. But they're here. So in terms of what am I thinking about in terms of materials for next year, we are talking a little bit, let's call it the preliminary phase of K-2 language arts instruction. There's been a couple of things that we've noticed. Well, you know what, I'll get to that. Anyway, so instructional materials and equipment is the 3rd priority. Capital improvements, stuff around the building, water fountains, LED signs, all that type of stuff. That's the 4th. Priorities stipulated by the CIWP for these 2 years. Focus on remediation, that's MTSS. Focus on rigorous instructional practices. Focus on restorative practices, and focus on aligned resources. Priorities were determined again with all the teaching staff and parents. So what's going to happen next year? We are taking a very, very strong look at WIN, right? And what is going on with WIN. The What I Need period was originally going to be, hey, having kids work on problem-based learning projects, things like that, that would be a little different than what they normally get in school. What it has become has been more work, right? And more work is great. I love more work, you know? And there's a role for it. But there should be some sort of, I want to learn something that I normally would never learn in school. Okay, I don't know if I took you over to Waldorf School, right? Okay, so at Waldorf School, if you're going to go to Waldorf School, you're going to pay about $30,000 per year, and you're going to see some things that you're not going to see at public school. One of the things is an integrated curriculum, like everything sort of matches, and you know what you learn in art has to do with something that you're learning in math, which has to do with something that you're learning in science. Okay, that's built in. This isn't new. Waldorf schools have been around for over 100 years. Okay, there's no technology, so there's no computers. There's none of that. Okay, so I'm looking around and I'm going, okay, so what are some of the systems that are out there that we need to look at? And I do this all the time. So I took some of our teachers last year to go visit Chicago Waldorf. It's pretty interesting, right? It was very different.
It was different.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that we saw was that they had like an elective that they would do like for 6 weeks, right? And this elective was completely out there. Like one of the ones that we saw was reflective geometry, right? And we're like, reflective, what is that? And it was like how light bounces off of objects and the angles that are sort of formed, and also like creating like beautiful artwork based on that type of stuff. And the teacher was teaching, it was like they wouldn't get this until if they were college advanced level mathematics. And I'm looking at this and going, oh my gosh, this is awesome. This is awesome. That should also be incorporated into our wing period. Something like, hey, I would love to learn how to draw still life. I would love how to do, how to really work on photography or really work on, and this is stuff that we've done before. Like Thorpe's done something like this years ago with advisory, I don't know, a long time ago, right? We need to get back to those types of creative, different, what makes us unique type of ideas, because that's what you guys picked us, right? So we need to be responsive to that. Yes, there's reading, there's writing, there's math, there's science, there's social studies, etc. But there's also the stuff that you would never get anywhere else, and we need to really focus on the stuff that you would never get anywhere else. So everybody is going to be looking at wing time and seeing how they're going to incorporate some of these types of electives, and teachers are going to freak out about this. I know they are, because we have so much stuff that we have to do. There's MTSS, kids that have to catch up. There's NWA pressure all the time. So every year you have to grow more than the year before, and it becomes like, I'm teaching 8th grade material in 4th grade, what else can I do? That type of stuff. Teaching trig in 7th grade, because what else can I do? In terms of, so we have to keep it all in mind, but the idea of that flexible time originally was to give them something that was completely different, and I want to revisit that and say, let's do our completely different. And that's going to take time for professional development and planning, and how are we going to do that? So we're going to continue our focus on writing. Big difference is I want digital communications as a core component of every single grade, right? So our kids are pretty good at this already, so it's kind of cheating, right? Mr. Victor does a really nice job of working with them on media and different projects from kindergarten through 8th grade. How are we incorporating what we're learning in music and technology class into our traditional curriculum? That has to happen. So I've seen in Mr. Roberts' class, kids are going around and they're explaining, this is the concept, this is how I did it, here it is, it's on a YouTube video, come and learn from what I'm teaching you. That's pretty awesome stuff. Things like Schoology and allowing kids to create those types of products, really important, because guess what? That's what they're going to do. Your children are going to have multiple jobs and a couple side hustles on the side. That's the way it goes, right? We know that's the new economy. The new economy is like, hey, I'm not going to work at a job for 30 years. I'm going to work multiple jobs for 30 years at the same time, right? So are we preparing our kids for that? We really have to look at our curriculum maps for alignment. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on here that I'm kind of concerned about. I want to make sure that every experience that you have, so every teacher's a little different, right? So in kindergarten, you're going to have, there's already a built-in, Ms. Sanabria does it a little bit different than Ms. Morales, who does it a little bit different than Ms. Bennett. That's cool. But the actual foundational level of what everybody's learning, there should be a base where everybody's getting the same thing. And if you're in gifted, it does not mean I teach you the next grade level. It means I teach you your grade level plus as much as I can of the next level, right? Because I don't want kids losing out. I've had kids who were in gifted programs who were phenomenal in math and could not write. And that would drive me insane. And I vowed that's not going to happen. So we've been working on writing over and over and over, just because we want to make sure that our kids need to be strong. One of the things that we've done very, very well is that we've raised our reading and our math scores so that they're more or less in line. We're the 90+ percentile both for reading and for math, which is pretty awesome. That's been a lot of work.
That's unusual, because when I used to work at the network level, you would have, across the district, in your district, the math scores were always like 10 points higher than the reading scores.
So
Right?
before my tenure here, we were 10 points higher in math across the grade levels. This has not been by accident. This has been a lot of focus on improving reading and writing, improving, getting teachers to really focus on their novels, focus on different instructional practices, learning from each other, all that type of stuff. So our reading and writing, I feel, is just as good as our math instruction. But it's not. So here's where I am. It always needs to get better. All right, and that's not saying that we're not doing a great job. It's just, this is the job. It always needs to get a little bit better. These poor people are under a ton of stress and a lot of pressure because they have this person over here saying, hey, that was fantastic. What do you do next? Right? But that's the job. And unfortunately, I wish it weren't like that, but that is what it is. We have to always be continually improving and continually getting better. So we have to look at our curriculum maps, make sure that alignment is actually there, so that if you go to Thorpe and you're in first grade, there's a foundation of, we'll get down to the bottom of it here. So balanced literacy K-2, right? So they all know how to read, they all know meaning, they all know sight words, right? They need to know phonics, okay? With Common Core, you've thrown away phonics, and that's horrible, right? So we need a strong phonics program, especially in kindergarten through second grade. So that's going to be happening in addition to the balanced literacy component of knowing strong comprehension, sight words, obviously, reading strategies, all the things that are included in balanced literacy. Focusing primarily in K-2, right? But phonics has been, as we've gone along, we've noticed that many of our kids are in our corrective reading programs. Our corrective reading programs are because they miss certain things in learning how to read. Because we're really good at the whole comprehension part, but there are some kids that are just really good at thinking. And they'll skip multiple words, but they'll get the gist, and it seems okay. Yeah. So we know this. It's just part of what we're, part of the things that we have to address. This year in first grade, we brought in Jolly Phonics. What I've seen so far has been really great, really great. But it has to be expanded, right? So right now, our teachers are sort of struggling with this concept because one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we've gotten rid of the basal. In educational cycles, that's what it used to be called. We got rid of the textbook, right? And I'm basically saying maybe you have to look and see if we need a textbook again, because there has to be elements across every single classroom where we're reading absolutely everything, and then bring in your novels, bring in all of the extra stuff that you're sort of doing our kids in second grade are reading novels, right? That's kind of a big deal. So these are authentic texts. I don't want to get rid of that. I just want to make sure that we hit all the instructional levels that we need to hit among the three teachers. But that's still a discussion that we're having. But definitely, the phonics is not a discussion. Everybody says we need to improve our phonics. Problem-based learning is continuing. I think the new, like, again, trying to demystify it and help teachers not think that it's this gigantic thing that we can't do, that's gonna take months. If we can get away from that and say, hey, no, this is the essential question that we're doing in our classroom. Here is the product that we did, right? In order to answer that essential question, come and see what we're doing. Parents, come and join us, take a look. Hey, people from the community, come and take a look at it. That's problem-based learning. We're addressing those interesting questions, and we're sharing it with people who are actually who matter, right? Beyond just the teaching. Here's an interesting one. Writing and mathematics for all teachers, that's going to continue. What does that mean, writing and mathematics for all teachers? What was I saying? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Problem-based learning, writing, and mathematics. So that's for professional development. So more professional development in writing and in mathematics. Here's one thing that I'm concerned about. Our DL numbers are getting way up there. And I'm concerned, I'm a little concerned about this. I was talking to some of our DL teachers, and I really think that a lot of it has to do with poor phonics instruction. If the kids can't read, right, or if they're struggling reading, they're going to be identified as diverse learners. And we need to make sure that we're giving every single opportunity for kids to really get to be at grade level, right? The other thing is we need to start thinking of DL as it is not, you guys know how much I hate labels. I hate labels on one side or the other, you know? I see labels as limiting for kids. So what I want to do is I want to make sure, hey, DL may mean you're there for a number of years and then you transition out. We have DL students who are out scoring our general education students. Why are they still in DL? Doesn't make sense to me. Move them out of DL. We have the supports because the people are there. Remember that those teachers, the inclusion teachers, are there at that grade level, and see what sort of happens. That has to become a priority for us. We've gone from when I started here, we were at 6% diverse learners. We are now at 12%, and we're going to be higher for next year. So what does that mean? That this random group of students that we have, you know, are qualifying for DL? No, what it means is that we're getting much better at identifying the needs of the kids. And when you identify those needs, well, where do they go? Well, we have DL, so we need to put them into our DL program. However, that DL program doesn't mean that they're there forever. And there has to be a shift in mindset, right? Where parents and teachers and students realize, I'm here. If I need the help, I get the help. If I get the help and I'm successful, I move out. That never happens in CPS. It doesn't happen anywhere. It will happen here. I mean, it's very, very rare that a student that's in a DL program leaves a DL program. And that's kind of important. Now, again, that doesn't mean that there's some students that are always going to be in DL. That's perfect. That's fine. They get the supports and the structure that they need. Anyway, so that's in there as well. So we really have to start taking a look at that because there's a strong hunch that because we need a stronger phonics program from kindergarten to second grade, we're thinking that some of our kids may not be getting the necessary skills in reading that they need, which therefore will translate into underperforming compared to their peers. And if they underperform by 2 or 3 years, that's what? They're in the DL program. So it's, again, just making sure that we're looking at all of this. And then the expansion. So here I am saying, looking at our DL numbers, and then I'm saying, let's continue expanding our DL instructional practice. So in other words, what we're doing in 4th grade, I want to do in multiple grades, right? So that we have multiple teachers that are general education and DL, and they're sort of working together. There's multiple reasons why I'd like to do that. We only need to do it in 1 grade level in order to get the benefits for the entire school, but it doesn't always have to be 1 grade level. It can be multiple. And I think that as teachers, as this becomes the new norm, this is just what's going to happen. Like 10 years from now, this will be like, oh my gosh, we can't think of doing it any other way. Right now, it's very different. Right now, it's very different because we are not used to doing this. All right, so that's sort of future. Okay. Here's some of the things that we've done in terms of facilities. I started crossing some of these out because I wasn't going to put them up there. I'm like, man, we've done a lot. Okay, so thank you, Friends of Thorpe, balcony repairs and additions. Thank you, Friends of Thorpe, kitchen repairs and additions. Thank you, Friends of Thorpe, reduce noise in hallways, through scheduling and soundproofing, TV broadcast studio with set, facility upgrades and lighting throughout the building. These are all things that we've done within the last couple of years, right? More things that we need to do. Our current projects, I have not forgotten. I did tell Friends of Thorpe, we're getting an LED sign. If you guys get us a balcony, getting an LED sign, just making sure that we don't get totally, screwed on price, which is, I shouldn't have said that on YouTube. Ripped off on price. But that is where I am. Garden improvements. So we talked about that. Sensory walks, we talked about that. Flooring, I've done a pretty good job of looking and seeing where the floors are sort of messed up in the classrooms, but when we're seeing that there's cracking and things like that, we've been replacing them. Lockers for 3rd through 5th. So Friends of Thorpe, thank you very much, because we need this, and we're trying to see if we can expand it so that we get the entire 2nd floor, but we're gonna need to work on that. Balcony sound equipment actually should be crossed out. We bought that last year. The ADA ramp was actually put in. We need blinds, like we need these blinds, these roller shades are horrible. And we need a turf field eventually. We don't know when that's gonna happen. And then the renewed implementation of the campus park plan. We spent quite a bit of time, and Ms. Marchand knows there's a lot of really great plans that were in there that we sort of have to revisit. And we have to say, hey, look, are we doing this? How are we doing this? All these things. So that gives you a little bit of a glimpse into the future of facilities. All right.
When you say LED sign, what was?
LED signs, so just,
School sign.
yeah. So instead of having to go out there with the letters, just doing that. This one was long, sorry guys.
That was a budget meeting into a vision, into a, thank you for your.
No.
No, it's good.
Ties together.
Any other questions? Any new business? Any old business? It's been a long day for you teachers, so thank you very much.
So we do need a plan for the meeting, let's say.
I think we should pick a day while we're here
I
now.
think we should turn on the lights so we don't fall asleep.
Yeah, sorry guys. See, I'm so
No,
excited
I'm
about
not
that.
that you were boring.
I'm totally awake.
But it's a
No,
long
I'm
day.
completely,
Listen, you were on a roll. You weren't gonna stop your mojo.
It was interesting.
I
I just
just
was now.
We come back on the 22nd, so
Everybody
we're.
still has their principal survey.
So do we want to do it on the
The
24th?
20, you do it on a Wednesday? Are
I
people
mean,
working on
morning,
Wednesday?
night, or what are we doing?
I would love to do morning if possible.
I'd love to do morning too.
Wednesday morning,
Morning.
second, can I have a motion for Wednesday morning?
I don't know if she knows
Wednesday the what?
Wednesday, April 24th at 7 a.m. to review and vote, approve the budget.
I make a motion. We'll approve.
I don't think we have to approve the meeting. No motion.
Well, I make a motion. and-
There we go.
I think we're gonna adjourn is probably.
Yeah, I don't make a motion.
Okay.
We haven't.
April 24th,
LSC
7
meeting,
a.m.
7
budget
a.m.
vote.
7 a.m.
7 a.m.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you all for being here. You have one more thing you want to add?
Well, I just want to let our council know that this is due on the 22nd. It has to be there, I believe, then. So, I mean, I have the paperwork. If you want to take the papers home to read about it, take an envelope home and
A little
then return it
research.
to me, you're more than welcome. Bill and I kind of went through it during it, we voted early.
All right.
So.
All right.
I'm carrying my speech.
I had personally done my research before. This is
Oh,
just
yeah.
standard. All right,
Wait, don't you guys know?
every time I try to adjourn, someone
Oh, you
says
want to
that.
get in the morning? now.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
We have to actually.
We have to vote on that?
I motion to adjourn this meeting.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Harriet. So good to see you.
You get through?
This one off.
It's a clear on both sides.